Okay, so we're off and running. This is Flameless Fireside, and tonight the topic is dating after divorce, the smart approach to differentiate it from the other approach. And this is part two. And we have as a guest tonight um, Doug Rutherford, and welcome, Doug.
Hi, everybody.
How's it going?
Fantastic.
Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. We're looking forward to this discussion um, and for a discussion at the end too. We'll go over what we talk about and let everybody contribute at that point. So, as we usually do, we're going to just start by focusing on our guest Doug and get to know him a little bit better. And so, Doug,
Oh,
why don't you
do I get my
enter?
own intro
Yeah,
theme music?
yeah, get your theme music and get your notes out so that you remember who you are and what your life has been about. And then go ahead whenever you feel ready. Go ahead and share that with us. Tell us about yourself.
Let's see. One time I did intro theme music to Rocky's "Eye of the Tiger," but I know some of our audience won't get this one, but I'll just do a little bit of this.
Okay, let's go.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Schlemiel, Heisenberg, We're gonna do it. Give us any chance, we'll take it. Everybody, welcome in. Any rule, we'll break it.
Yeah,
We're
man.
gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way. Nothing's gonna turn us back now. Straight ahead
So,
on the track now.
so Laverne and Shirley.
Make our dreams come
I know
true.
this.
We don't have to do the whole thing. Basically, we're gonna do it our way. We can make our dreams come true.
Let's just do it. You know, we're all a lot of us. We're newbies tonight. We're like we haven't done this before. So normally it's Everett and Celeste. But man, we're just gonna have fun and hope that we push all the right buttons at the right times.
Who's monitoring the chat?
I think the other two. I'm just kind of focused more on you. So
Okay,
we'll go with
for
that.
the people participating in the chat, who's the first one that can name the theme song, the show for the theme song?
Oh, see, I already gave it away. But
you?
hopefully nobody heard me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They probably all
I
know it.
mean, it's a breakup from Happy Days, right?
Oh yeah, it kind of was.
It's
Yeah, it was a.
I don't remember the name. I was just thinking about this yesterday because I work at a bottling plant.
Yep, it might be
Michelle
right.
got it.
Yep.
Michelle got it, and Jason got it.
Oh,
Yeah, Laverne and Shirley.
yeah, Laverne and Shirley.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
I think I'm the oldest on this entire podcast, so I would totally remember that. So, um, so Doug, how do you do it your way?
I don't worry so much about what other people think, and I
Okay,
just do what I think is right.
I love that. Okay,
Just
so
follow
um,
things and
and so what else do you do with your life? Tell us about what's a day in the life of Doug like.
All right. So professionally speaking, I'm in IT. I generally work with IT infrastructure. So I don't do a lot of programming per se, but all the stuff that the programmers do, um, I take care of their stuff, all of their environments that they program in, test in, deploy in, automation, storage, networking, um, logging, monitoring, alerting, all that kind of stuff that really nobody other wants to know about. They just want it to work. And when they say, "What do you guys do?" We don't see you guys doing anything, and we say, "Did you guys have an outage? You're welcome."
Right. There
Yeah.
you go. So you keep everything plugged in and at the right temperature
Yeah.
and like all the wires heading in the right direction,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, it has to happen. Um,
Somebody has
uh,
to do it.
right? Exactly. And you know what? I actually had a client years ago who did that. Actually, only a couple of years ago. And it was amazing to me how he told me that the difference it makes by being totally organized and having all that equipment in the right place and when you don't. And so he'd have these new guys that he would train and he'd have to go in and redo the entire setup sometimes. And so he said part of what we worked on was helping him learn how to prep people better in advance rather than chew them out on the back end. And anyway, Have you noticed that? Do you have just the right way you do it?
Um, there's in IT, there's a lot of ways to do, a big projects. Um,
Right.
and if it's something that I do on a regular basis, then yeah, if there's a process that I follow. But
Mhm.
um, I'm also open to when I took my college classes. One of them that I took was on project management, and there's something called Six Sigma, and part of that is just analyzing the way you're doing things, processes. It's process
Mhm.
improvement. So you talk about what went well, what didn't go well, and how the process could be improved. You carry
Love it.
forward the stuff that went well, and improve the things that didn't. So I'm open to that as well. So
Okay.
if there's set way we've been doing it all the way, if there's a way to do it better, let's do it. And I would have a hard time working for a company that if I say, why are we doing this, and they say, well, we've just always done it that way. I'm like, no, that's not a good enough answer.
Right.
Give me a reason.
Okay. So you're like
Long live
the
legacy software.
Yeah, out, out, out.
out damn spot.
That's right.
Okay. Um, so I have a feeling that that's going to be a metaphor for later. I'm going to just put that on like on a bookshelf.
Yes.
So when we get our wires crossed, see where I'm going with it? Like, how do we, do it the smart way, right? But going back to your life, tell us about, tell us from the beginning. I was a child in this town. Uh,
In the beginning, the dinosaurs roamed the earth, and then, oh, John muted. You muted.
It was muted.
I meant you, Doug, not the beginning of the earth. I meant the beginning of Doug.
Yeah, so I'm actually currently in my parents' house in the Seattle area, just south of Seattle, and I lived here in this home when I was just finishing my high school years. But I lived in Southern California for 7 years, from my second grade to seventh grade. But most of my life has been spent here in the Seattle area. But I moved to Utah about 8 years ago and got divorced about 4 years ago. That's the nutshell. How much more do
Okay.
you
Which
want?
city? By Seattle.
Auburn.
Auburn. Yeah, I have a friend who works in Auburn. I live in Ellensburg, so
Oh,
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
it's not too far.
Oh, yeah. I knew that. We talked about you a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
You and
Ears
your
were
lady.
burning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So give us some highlights. What is it like, from that time, those early days until now? What are some things that stand out in your life as far as what shaped you, so to speak?
Well, I guess most of the people that know me now, um, from my singles life, um, don't don't really know, or would maybe even believe that most of my life I was shy, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, was not outgoing at all. Um, I was at least to some degree depressed most
Right.
of my life.
Okay.
My dad called me Eeyore, thanks for noticing me, like that. And I did. I felt invisible, I
Right.
wanted to belong to, social groups and stuff, but I didn't really feel like I knew how to engage and, insert myself and talk to people. I was so intimidated by
Hmm.
most everybody else. Um, you know, I didn't, even when I went on my mission, I served my mission in Central Canada, the Winnipeg mission. It was hard, going and knocking on strangers' doors and having to talk to strangers. Um, and some of that helped, um, but still not to the extent it did when I went through my divorce. I, um, I learned who I am. Uh,
Okay.
as a part of my divorce, I feel like God gave me a glimpse into how He views me, and that changed everything for me. Changed my life, and now finally I know what it means to be a child of God. Now I'm very outgoing. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking too much. I talk to everybody now, and it doesn't matter what their status is. It doesn't matter how successful they are, how rich they are. I've talked to CEOs of 80,000 people or more. It's enabled me to talk to before. I didn't even want to talk to people that I thought were more attractive than me, which was most people. And now I can talk to anybody because I realize we're all equal. We're all on this same rock, going around the same fireball in the sky. You
Hmm.
know, cut us and we bleed, and we're all sons and daughters of our Heavenly Father.
I love
Uh,
it.
and so now I can talk to all these people like they're like I'm just at a family reunion.
Hmm.
Aunts, uncles, cousins, whatever.
That's awesome.
That's a good realization. That's powerful.
It is. It is.
It's a game changer.
If that's one gift I wish I could just put in a box and give to people, is to help them to see themselves the way God views them, at least to some degree. At
Yeah.
least
Hmm.
it's been the single most powerful gift I feel that He's given me. That and empathy, but that's more of a double-edged sword too.
I think that's one of those gifts we're going to get. If we haven't gotten it yet, we'll get it in the end. Is to see as we are seen, as the scripture says.
Yeah,
Like
and
to see ourselves as God sees us.
I've,
So,
I've had people, say, why do you, treat me so well? Why do you, think I'm so amazing? And I'm like, well, one, I have the beholder, and two, if you could only see what I see,
right,
if you could look into a mirror and have the glimpse of what looks back through my eyes, or better yet, through God's eyes.
right.
The best version of them. And
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, who they can be. I mean, we're all, we all make mistakes. Basically, most of us, really good children of Heavenly Father, but we all make mistakes, and unfortunately, we focus on the mistakes more than we
yeah,
focus
yeah.
on.
We are our own worst critics, definitely for sure.
Yep.
And now, I grew up in the church. I sang the primary songs. I am a child of God, but I really didn't understand what that meant until, the process of my divorce and getting um, that perspective. And at first, I'll be honest, I was kind of mad. Like, I grew up in the church. Who failed me, right? Who didn't make sure that I understood what this meant and was clear? And I realized, well, God answered my prayers. Like, you didn't need to know until now,
Okay.
is what He said.
It's almost like I think that he sets us, there's almost like layers that need to be built onto us to prepare us for the ultimate lessons in life. And then I don't know about you, Doug, but I've found that very often those ultimate lessons are delivered through absolute agony.
Sometimes, yeah,
you
you
know,
know,
Either
you,
agony or ecstasy. It just seems like, in other words, he really wants to get our attention one way or another. So,
yeah. And you mean we learn line upon line, precept upon precept,
oh yeah,
layers like onions,
right.
parfait.
Yeah. Until like the ultimate lesson, and then it's definitely then it's like you might get multiple lines downloaded in an instant, kind of Alma the Younger experience.
Yeah, we get
Um,
multiple lessons, and then we're given the test, right? We have tests all the time, and
mhm.
we're on question 34, and like, oh crap, wait, I want to go change question 7. No,
Mm.
no,
Sometimes no, sometimes almost like question 7's corrected by doing number 34. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So, so have you seen that as a theme in your life? How have you learned the lessons across the years? What were some of the big moments for you?
Well, so growing up, the feeling like I was invisible, I feel like I got to watch and monitor, and I learned a lot by, I learned a lot more by keeping my mouth shut and observing
Uh-huh.
than experiencing. So I tried to learn from other people's um, mistakes or successes. Um, I and this is maybe a little bit vulnerable, but I didn't date uh, really growing up. When people are going, being teenagers and going out on dates and stuff. That's how shy I was. I didn't. I went to one school dance, and it was a blind date, and I danced with her once. I went to a small handful of church dances, which I didn't have that much fun at because I felt awkward dancing, and I was just really too shy to ask anybody out. But also because um, I felt so fragile, I guess is for lack of a better word,
Hmm.
that I didn't want to take the chance of rejection. You know, maybe I was like Marty McFly or his dad, um, George, that I felt like my heart was so fragile that I didn't want to risk the chance of somebody rejecting me and getting hurt, so I never gave them the opportunity.
Got it. Which in some ways keeps you safe, but in other ways prevents important things from happening, you know?
Yeah, it's true. So I didn't go to my school prom, homecoming, any of that, and I didn't take advantage of those opportunities. I didn't want to be the guy that was there coming alone.
Got it.
So I just didn't go.
Uh-huh. So, so how did you actually meet your wife? You know, how did that lead to marriage and that kind of thing for you? Because it sounds like socially you were kind of isolated there, at least for a big part of your life leading up to that. Um, so what happened? How did you open up at least to somebody?
So before I went on my mission, we had a similar circle of friends already. And then when I came home off of my mission, she actually asked me to a single adult Valentine's dance, which is
Got it.
kind of big, but I was like, okay, awkwardly saying, just okay. And we dated for like a year, and then we were engaged for like another 7 months after that, and we were married for 18 years and three beautiful, awesome girls.
That's awesome. So what's it like with her and the girls now? Where are you at with that?
So they live about 15, 20 minutes from me, and I have a good relationship with her. In fact, I was over there for dinner a couple weeks ago. It was
Great.
for my youngest daughter's birthday. She just turned 15.
Hmm.
The other two are 18 and 20. And overall, we get along. Although I will say, with my oldest daughter, um, she was last year. Last year, she was called to serve a mission in Anaheim, a sign language mission. She was super excited. Ever since she got her patriarchal blessing, it talked about her going on a mission, and she was so excited. Um, and then she lived with me for a little while. Where I'm at now, I moved in September, and she moved in with me, and she did about 3 weeks of the MTC training, which was all online, and then she decided that she didn't want to go.
Oh, wow.
And I don't fully understand it. Um, I just tried to be a supportive dad, and it's your decision, and everything. But um, she just said the mission rules are too hard, too restrictive,
Hmm.
and I said, Jennifer, you haven't lived all of them for 24 hours. You won't stop talking to your boyfriend. And she claimed that he was a big emotional support for him, and that if she didn't talk to him, that it would be way worse. And I'm like, Jennifer, that's an unhealthy connection and relationship you have with him. He shouldn't be that for you.
Right.
That's not his job. You have a
But it
therapist.
was hard for her to hear that at the time. And
Oh yeah, yeah. And then Thanksgiving Day, after we finished our Thanksgiving dinner, it was just her and I. She moved out. She's living in a place with, I think she said, five other roommates, and I think she's not far from where he lives in
hmm.
that area ish. Um, but I saw her in December where we exchanged gifts on the side of the road. That was her desire, and then I haven't seen her since.
Okay.
And sometimes I last I heard from her was Happy Father's Day, and that's all. But
Okay.
I'll try and call her and text her, and it's kind of black hole, and I just
Right.
let her know that I love her, and stuff like that. But I have my youngest daughter here. I brought her up here to Seattle area with me for this 2 week trip, and she's visiting with her aunt and cousins right now.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and then my middle daughter, I think she's just started a new job, and she'll be starting Utah Valley University later this month for psychology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I am familiar with that subject.
I know.
So,
It used to be, I forget the whole word, but it has the words industrial and psychologist in it. Basically,
oh,
she's
okay. Yeah, yeah,
a psychologist for businesses.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, productivity and turnover and things like that are all related to how people are doing mentally. So, yeah, they train people in that. So, I thought about that at one point, so I can relate. Um, so, um, and so then how did how's your life been since? You go on the mission, you get married, um, and not that you have to go into all the divorce stuff, but just what has life been like since those pivotal moments when you opened up to someone else and to
So,
people on your mission?
so I'll say that divorce was by far the hardest thing I ever went through in my life. Um, I'll just say I almost didn't make it.
Got it.
I got really dark place, um, and I'm glad I got out. I got out of that place. I realized that I needed to desperately get out of that place. So my um, my spiritual side changed a lot. It got more intense. Um,
Mhm.
my prayers got more focused. I spent more time at the temple or at the temple grounds. I met with my bishop every week. I met with a therapist every week for months initially, um, and then I I found I found myself um, becoming more emotional. Uh,
Okay.
I grew up in a home where I hope my dad can't hear me. Um, where my dad would say, stop that crying before I give you something to cry about.
Got it.
Meaning that I wasn't really supposed to feel emotion, right? And so I thought growing up, especially as a dude, that feeling two or three emotions at any given time was normal. Uh, and they were simple, basic emotions. But then, fast forward, my daughter came home from her counselor one time with this sheet that shows a bunch of drawn faces representing emotions. And my wife said, your daughter's feeling 18 of those emotions. I'm like, wow, that seems like a lot. So I'm like, I wonder how many I'm feeling. And this was after my divorce had started. I was in my divorce process, trying to comprehend all these things going on. And I counted up just on this sheet 24 emotions that I was feeling all at the same time. Contrast to the three or so that I'm used to feeling. Now I'm all of a sudden feeling 24, and it felt like there was this just flood of emotions now that I was able to feel. Initially, it was just like when floodgates are open from a dam, there was this initial torrent, you know, and
Hmm.
I feel like those floodgates are still open, but now it's just a large steady flow, uh,
Right.
and that's where the empathy comes from.
Well,
And
Doug,
yeah,
I was going to say, growing up feeling like you're not supposed to feel those feelings, you're supposed to be a macho, manly man.
yeah.
Um, did that, you find that complicated when you're having empathy so much? It's just like this battle.
Well, I tie that in now with, um, a sense of self, a realization of who I am now, and being able to be emotional and uh, have emotion and express emotion. Because now I know who I am. I don't care what other people think because I know that I I know how I look in his eyes, and that's good enough. So if somebody sees me cry or whatever, I'm like, you know what? I'm expressing an emotion right now.
Right.
Or if I'm, really intensely angry, or upset, depressed, whatever, I give myself time to feel and experience and express that emotion in a healthy way. But I don't forward my mail there. I don't set up camp. I drive around the block with it a couple times and then I move on.
Okay.
Love it. Hey, where do you live now?
I'm in Lehigh. And
Okay.
yeah,
Because as you know, I had an event in Logan a
yeah,
couple weeks ago,
that's where yeah,
and you brought a friend and took like a 2 hour drive
yeah,
one way to come see my event. And then like you and I had barely met each other. We were working with the Boise Bash,
yeah.
and I just when I saw you there, I'm like, is that Doug? Is that the dog guy that I've been seeing on Boise Bash, messaging and stuff like that?
The Doug,
I
yes.
was really listen, I was pretty blown away by that. It just seems like you're a very spontaneous guy and you care about people. And I'm glad we got a shot of us, you, me, and what was her name again?
Katie.
Katie, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, just it was great to see you both. And anyway, I just really appreciated that. And I said, man, that speaks a lot about Doug. So I just wanted to thank you tonight for doing that. And yeah, that's one of
yeah,
my favorite photos now.
yeah.
So
You bet. It was. I'm like, Katie was going up, and I'm like, can I come with you? And she drove, and we came up, and she's like, okay, but we're stopping at the burger bar in Roy on the way back. And I'm like, okay, I've been there once. And she's like, I'm stopping there whether you are eating there or not. It's like we're gonna be in the area anyway. We stopped at Burgers. No, it was
so it wasn't just for me, it was for the burgers.
well, we figured as long as
But
we're
I
gonna
like to know I'm right up there with the
yeah,
burgers,
yeah,
on importance. But
yeah. No, sometimes yeah, I am spontaneous. More it's adventurous. I like to you know live my life. I'll give you one example. I mentioned I moved into the place that I'm in now back in September. And in the corner of my living room next to my TV is a box that holds my receiver and my surround sound speakers. I have not yet set them up uh,
oh,
because while that's important to me, I feel like I would rather not be on the couch as much as I would be out doing stuff for other people or just doing stuff, for me and exploring and doing some adventure and, you know, living life and having positive experiences.
yeah, I mean, now I'm kind of feeling guilty sitting around watching YouTube. And I should be out like going to events and like being more engaged. So, but you were a great example of that to me. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, now I'm organizing events and activities for singles. I guess more on the background. I'm admin of a large Come Follow Me study group. That I invite people in the Salt Lake area to participate in. We've got
Oh, great.
over 1,200 members where we meet together. Usually the second and fourth Sundays. I'm out of town for August for those Sundays, but we do that. I've got a foam dance party on the 13th in Orem.
Oh yeah, I saw that, I think.
Yeah, foam as in bubbles. Every time I speak it into my phone, it thinks I'm saying phone. It's like not a phone party. Like, come on. I know. We're gonna have a couple.
Everybody dial in
Yeah,
and we'll have a blast.
that's
Just
right.
dance with your phone.
Talk away.
That's really
Um,
that's really egotistical of your phone to think you're always talking about it,
I
right?
know, right? Right.
Uh,
It's like that's not all about you.
Right? No, that sounds like a blast. So yeah, I never thought of myself like dancing in foam, but now I'm kind of thinking about it.
Well, I was kind of inspired by an event that I went to a couple years ago. It was a foam glow 5K where they had all these foam bubble machines, and it was so much fun. I'm like, I am so sad that my kids didn't want to come to this because it was so much fun. I literally had bubbles over my head. Like it was little tidal waves of bubbles, and I'm like, this was so much fun. Even if you're not much of a dancer, like I'm not, who doesn't love playing with bubbles? I mean, like, let out your inner child, you know, and just do it.
I think I don't know about you, but that's particularly important for those of us who've really been through hard adulthoods. I think maybe rechilding, I think it seems like I've heard something like that we go back to childhood and experience what we didn't back then,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I since we're on this topic, I incorporate that into some dating, and I encourage people to do that too. Is Your dates don't have to be like, always like formal. Make them fun. In fact, I've done this. I've gone to even the dollar store, go get a thing of bubbles, go get a kite, and play on a date. It's so
Ooh, I
much
like that.
fun. Like here you go, go get, especially now when the weather's hot, go get a thing of water balloons. Go get some Nerf guns.
Hmm.
Whatever. If you find someone that's into being playful like that, then stay with that person.
Right. Just make sure you don't like drill your date in the face with a water balloon.
No, not on the first date.
Aim for below, kind of more in the leg area.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a second date or after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
second date, go ahead and nail her in the face. So, uh,
You said it, and tell
that's
them John
right.
gave you permission.
One of the most favorite scenes in the new Beauty and the Beast movie, the live action, is where she throws a snowball at him, hits him in the shoulder, all playful, and then he nails her right in the face with this big basketball-sized snowball and knocks her down on her back. I'm like, okay, normally that would be mean and I wouldn't laugh,
I,
but in
I
the
think
movie,
I know where they got that. They got that from Dumb and Dumber. Do you remember in Dumb and Dumber what like she throws a snowball at him and then he not only he gets really ticked off and throws a snowball back and then he goes and rubs her face in the snow,
yeah,
and like I'm like, whoa, he took that very personally, you
yeah.
know. So that's not good. That's not smart dating, I don't think.
No. I'll give one more thing. A first
Go
date,
ahead.
don't go to the movie. The only time I say do go to the movie on a first date is if you already know that you both are some geeks or for some fandom that you both share. Like, oh, it's a
Yeah.
brand new whatever, movie coming out
Hmm.
that's along these lines that we're both, big fans of. Otherwise, don't do that
Right.
because you can't talk.
Yeah, that's true. When your faces are both facing the screen, it's kind of hard to get to know each other in
Yeah,
that
don't do it.
setting. So, okay. Hey, we're already talking about it, about dating. The subject for tonight is dating after divorce, the smart approach. And and we got you on here, Doug. You're like the poster boy for smart dating. Whether you like it or not, we're looking to you, man. But yeah, let's have a discussion about that. What are some things from your perspective, Doug, that make dating smart? That are just wise things to consider.
Well, I think probably there's already been talk about not dating before you're ready and things like that. Um, I tell people be yourself, be genuine. Even if you're
Mhm.
awkward, just own it. Um, I I have this friend. She told me about this guy friend she has. They would go to a dance, and let's say it's just this upbeat, fast music, and he's asked her, "Would you like to dance?" And he goes out there and just does like a holds her, does like a slow dance with her, even with this really fast, upbeat music. That's his awkward, and she thinks it's hilarious, and she loves it. He owns it, right? I will say one exception to that rule though is, and people have different opinions of this, so I apologize for those who don't agree with me. But if you don't have confidence in yourself, fake that.
Mhm.
Fake confidence in yourself. Here's why. Because if you can fake confidence in yourself, eventually you'll see how the other people respond to your confidence, and then
Mhm.
you won't have to fake it anymore.
Got it.
That you'll gain that confidence.
See, to me, that's not fake. It's almost like forcing yourself to be real, because I think the real us is confident. Like if we were to really tap into our true self, I think it's the chicken version of us is the fake. That's sort of the false
Yeah.
version of us.
Yeah, Jason says fake it till you make it. Yeah, kind of. In this case, yes.
Yeah.
In this case, yes. And I say that because from my perspective, from my personal life experience, I did not have that confidence. I did not go on dates before I got married. I came home off my mission. I dated my wife, and we got married.
And
Uh,
she asked you.
she asked me,
Huh?
and I always thought it was because I was unattractive, right?
Got it.
And then I got divorced, and I wasn't all of a sudden, all of a sudden magically attractive. Like my physical appearance didn't change all of a sudden, but how I viewed myself did.
Got it.
And I found this. Okay, guys, are you listening? Listen to this. Women find confidence sexy.
Hallelujah.
Done. Okay?
Yeah,
You know, test it.
I've definitely found that.
That's all.
In fact, you brought that up, and we're doing the Boise Bash together. You're working on the dance on Saturday night, and I'm doing some presentations, and Michael's going to be there too, I think, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the docket. Yeah, and anyway, for any of you going to that Friday night presentation I'm doing is on attractiveness, and then it says, but it's not what you think, and it's really nothing about like what you look like. It's all about how you show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and so kind of that masculine feminine energy stuff. And you're right, I think confident, it's not arrogance. We got to be really clear about that.
So make sure you have humility, definitely.
Right. But it's more balanced. But confidence is something really powerful, and I think we particularly appreciate it in men. And I'm not even talking about in a romantic setting necessarily. I think children like confident dads. I think bosses like confident employees.
Yeah.
And I think women like confident men. I honestly think men really like confident women too. And so
Yeah. I was going to say, Christina said it goes both ways. I want to hear more about that a little bit.
yeah, go Christina.
Absolutely, because this is a really good topic, and I'm really interested in the conversation that we're having, because over time I learned how to be confident, especially after my divorce. And the confidence process isn't necessarily pretty, but I think what it falls down to is knowing your worth. That is very important, because once you know your worth, then the energy that you exudes to the external environment, it just shines through. And I believe in the principle of energy attracts like energy. So if I exude joy genuinely, I would attract people who resonates with the type of energy. And I like what John mentioned earlier about the masculine and feminine energy, because it's so powerful to have those attributes to number one, like being vulnerable and being willing to to put yourself out there, whether it results to something more than dating or just getting to know people. You will never know until you try. And I think women can sense that with men if they're comfortable in their own skin, uh, be able to set boundaries. I think for me, the number one is communication. If somebody can communicate, I think that's sexy, because there's a lot of factors that we have to consider when we're finding mate or when we're dating. I think we have to have the emotional, the intellectual, the physical aspect of it, the spiritual aspect of it. So if somebody exudes the confidence um,
Mhm.
in those area in their lives, it shines through. It just shows. I don't know how else to explain it, but I think you're able to see that people are just confident in their own ways. And I really like the fact that confidence also comes with being confident in your own skin. When Dog said earlier, like, I don't care what other people think, I'm at that point in my life and like, I don't care if you like me. I'm me. So if we vibe, we vibe. If we don't, it's okay.
Yeah, it's
It's
okay.
not gonna hurt my feelings. I'm not gonna be offended. We're all adults here.
Yeah,
Right.
one thing I like that you said was that you talked about communication. I think one thing I learned to look for in other people is their ability to have hard, difficult conversations.
Yes.
Do they run away from that? They try to avoid it, or are they like, okay, yeah, we need to talk about it. It's important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I won't be in a relationship with someone that's not willing to do that, because what's the point? Eventually it's gonna, fall apart. And I think that's a mistake that many
Yeah,
of
we're
us
gonna
can
have to
make.
address it at some point.
Yeah. And if you're in a marriage and that's happening, then
Yeah,
well,
a
I
lot
mean,
more on the line at that point. Probably
yeah.
better to get it done early.
Yeah. In fact, this is I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but this is one of the things that I brought up to Tara about the Boise Bash. So I don't know if we're gonna do this. So don't anybody get their heart set on it yet. But I said
Cut
if
his mic. Cut his mic.
I said
Just kidding.
if there was time and space to do this, I want to have a panel discussion, uh, and have you, John, on the panel, and maybe a couple other people who are not afraid to talk about some of the difficult subjects,
Right.
and
So
say that it's okay.
Yes.
so we're not doing that specifically, but in a way we are. And if I could just describe that for you, I think it's kind of like with communication. Sometimes it's we think the issue is communication, or we think it's dating, or we think it's marriage. But in reality, that's a sort of a surface subject. And what's underneath that is who we are and how we manage ourselves. And so, in a way, like talking about attraction on Friday night, or talking about mindfulness, or talking about managing our health and our emotions, and I think all of that will do more for dating than a talk about dating. And so that's sort of the theme for this year. It's not to say that dating won't come up in all of those presentations. Like, how does this apply to, in fact, I would imagine that probably pretty much every subject we could fold dating and relationships into it.
Sure.
And so I think those discussions will happen, but the only difference is just rather than a panel, it's just more of an open discussion in a presentation. So
Yeah, well, I'll put it in there for anyone going that wants to have some of those discussions. I'm not afraid to talk about some of the stuff, some of that stuff, because I believe that we can have, a safe environment where we say there's not going to be any judgment or criticism, and we want to create an environment where you can be allowed to feel vulnerable, and let's talk about some of those hard things.
And
Off your chest.
I think that's one of the, I haven't been to a bash yet, but being on the committee has been really good for me, because the sense I get from it is that those discussions not only happen on the schedule, but they happen in between everything, and I agree. I think that's probably one of the best parts of the bash, is you come to a place where you feel accepted, and you're able to share openly and to listen to people and give them feedback, so
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
we encourage that for sure.
So somebody, I can't remember, somebody touched on communication, which is a good segue to another point that I wanted to bring up. Is that I always try to promote this free class, based on the book How to Avoid Falling for a Jerk by Dr. John Van App. And there is a free class. I don't get anything for saying this, by the way. I just think it's a great class, and I got the opportunity to talk to the author when I went to a singles conference in California, and picked his brain about it a little bit. A friend of mine said that it should be a prerequisite to marriage, and he's like, no, it should be a prerequisite to dating, and I tend to agree with him. For those in Utah that are interested in taking this free class, it's online now. It's instructor led, so it is the same night you can do for 5 weeks, or I think they have a schedule that's like all like a 2-day thing. But go to healthyrelationshipsutah.org. Kristen, if you can put that in the chat, healthyrelationshipsutah.org. And the class is called Smart Dating, actually.
So relationship with healthy relationships.
Yeah.
.org. Okay.
Okay. Can I just say, we don't want any more drinking before the show if you're going to co-host. So
Yep, I apologize.
that's the new rule.
I'm not going to apologize.
Yeah. You've clearly been drinking kombucha.
Some kind of juice. Okay.
It's kind of old. You left it in the fridge just a little bit too long, I think.
One thing I liked that we've kind of hit on, that I think is really important is, there are a lot of fish in the sea. A lot of times we just say, oh, there's nobody there, there's nobody interested. Well, I mean, they're out there. You can bring them in by the law of attraction, like Christine said. I totally believe in that. But also, by doing things. You don't have to do it first date, but maybe a couple dates in, you talk about like really big things. Are they able to have difficult conversations? Because for me, it's a way to kind of I can say, well, I'm not really interested if they aren't able to do that. And so it kind of narrows the field of
Right.
who you'd like to be with. And it's because John said those are super important things to know.
Right.
Before you
I
go.
definitely think that their willingness to have the conversation is huge. I would just add to that, how they have the conversation is also huge. Because to me, the two things we have to avoid in ourselves and each other when it comes to dating is extremes. And one extreme is I don't want to deal with anything hard. I sort of like an avoidant sort of connection. And the other one's anxious, like we have to talk about everything right now, and I need to just spill my guts and say everything, and you need to too, and I'm going to kind of pressure you into doing that. And I think somewhere in between those two extremes is this beautiful place where we can have hard discussions, but there's also a certain level of patience. And I want to see, like, are they patient with me while I try to open up? Are they encouraging? Do they handle the truth well? When I share hard facts, are they able to maintain a certain level of composure? Those are all things that matter. And that's more of the how is what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So something for all of my dating life until recently, I didn't understand or value the importance of safety in a relationship. Like, are you in there? Do you feel safe to share yourself, to be yourself, and do they feel safe to do that with you? I've been in so many, pursuits that was not the case. And so when you find it, hold on to it if you can, because that is so, I didn't know what that felt like.
Right.
I know what it didn't felt like, but I didn't understand the contrast.
Right.
And it's just, it changes everything.
Right.
If you're safe, you feel safe with your partner, what was good can be amazing.
Right. We should feel safe no matter what truth we have to tell. I know some things are hard to hear, but one, we need to be open about what we struggle with, but on the other end, we need to appreciate authenticity and people being vulnerable with us. Even if what they're sharing with us is hard for us to hear, and I think when you combine those two, it can be a really powerful relationship. I've just seen people who will share, I'm really struggling, like I'm depressed, or I'm angry, or I struggle with an addiction, or I struggle with, my anger or whatever. They'll be open about that. And then we use that as an excuse to just beat the living crap out of them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's okay to tell them, I'm not okay with that. I don't want to have this in our relationship. I want to find a better way, but I genuinely appreciate you being open with me about that. And I hope that you will always come to me and that we can have that conversation.
Right.
Does that mean that you should have to say that for them to be honest? No, they should be honest even if they get pounded. But I just think if we want to do the dance of honesty, we got to also do the dance of gentleness and patience.
Right. I think we want to backtrack a little bit, because let's say we're talking about dating. So people who's here tonight might want to hear, like, well, what's the initial step of that honesty and communication when I'm about to date? So what my thoughts on that is, before you start dating, whatever the circumstances are, whether you're divorced, separated, widower, no judgment whatsoever, or just coming from a breakup. I think when you decide to start dating, is decide or ask yourself what your negotiables and non-negotiable. Because let's say if you have a non-negotiable, I want somebody who can clearly communicate. And let's say you're on a dating app, or in clearly chatting isn't strong suit, a strong form of communication. There has to be a level of, like, maybe let's do a phone call, and I think you'll be able to open up more and get to know that person, and then just kind of decide what that, make a list of negotiables and non-negotiables. I think it's really important to know that before going into the dating scene, because you can be honest, you can be communicative for as much as you want, but if you
Right.
don't know where your boundaries are, then you're gonna go through the hoops, which is fine. Dating is supposed to be, um, I mean, it's fun and it's also miserable at the same time.
It can be both. Yes.
It can be both, but I
And
think there's power to when you know what you want.
Right.
Sure, you'll have a goal, like which is the bigger picture, and then you kind of narrow it down to like to attain that goal, whether that's marriage, long-term relationship, a hookup. It doesn't matter what it is. It's your life, and you get to decide what is good for you. But when you decide, you have to know, you have to have a certain level of knowledge about what you want going into dating.
So
That's
I'm curious to see what Doug says about this, but
yeah,
I I do believe these hard conversations need to happen, but I want to go back to what Doug was talking about with being playful.
yes.
I will admit something, and that just is when I have dated, sometimes it's just been one or two dates. And part of the reason is I think people just want to get to the hard conversations so fast.
Yes.
And it's like, can we just find out if we even enjoy time together?
Yeah,
Can
it
we
should
just,
be organic. Don't force it.
yeah, can we just have fun? So, let's do the kite flying, lawn darts, whatever, if you still have any, because they've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
ruled out. But anyway, what
That's
do you think about that, Doug?
right.
So I'm hearing two overarching themes here, and Christina touched on both of them blatantly. And the two are one communication and two boundaries. So I want to touch base on both of those. Communication. I'll start with an experience from my own life. My primary love language for most of my life has been touch, and um, I had this discussion when I was married. It's like, how can you meet my love language? Like, I feel like I'm always initiating touch, and that made me feel unattractive, unloved, when she would not communicate to me in my love language. And she said, well, maybe I would be more likely to do that if you communicated it in mine. I'm like, okay, that sounds fair. What is it? She's like, well, I want to feel like I connect with you. I want to, bond with you. And, I want to feel understood. I'm like, okay, I can do that. At the time, I had access to a bunch of soft skills classes through my work. And I took all of the communications classes that I had available to me, conflict resolution, active listening, all that stuff. And I practiced it at home, and I feel like I definitely became a better listener. And you don't really understand the value of it until you get to put it to practice. Even my college writing courses, English classes, I was like, oh, why do this? And then I see some of the documents that come across me or some of the emails that I get, and I'm like, that was not even formed in a coherent way, and like that could have been written so much better. And being able to be, uh, an effective communicator, an effective listener, uh, you know, um, it's I'm finding how valuable it is. Post in the chat if you've seen the short little funny video called uh, uh, "It's Not About the Nail." It's not about the nail, and it
Oh
illustrates
yeah, yeah.
the importance of just listening and being, you know, being empathetic, and not about just fixing it. Because
Being, yeah, hyper focused on like the thing you think is the problem, but letting it be
yeah,
how they perceive it.
exactly that, um, and 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 I don't know what it is, but being a good listener without being, judgmental or critical, and helping a person to feel safe. I can't tell you the number of times a person has said to me, I don't know why I just shared that with you. I haven't talked about that in 5 years, or I haven't shared that with anybody,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, or I don't know why I'm crying in front of you. I don't cry, period. And I think it's just about making them, feel safe and being that good listener, but then also the ability to communicate one's self. I still don't think I'm great at it. I think I need a much larger vocabulary sometimes to express what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. But I'm also self aware sometimes to know, hey, I've been talking too much, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
self-awareness is really important. I
Yeah.
like what you said about listening. I
Yes.
had a couple years ago, I had a relationship or a woman that I was really interested in, like I was really into, and we were going to meet up, and I just knew it was going to be awkward. Things have been awkward. And before that, I kind of prayed and I said, help me to listen, to understand, not, listen to respond,
Yeah.
or listen so that I can do this. It's just so I can understand. And that was a game changer. I'm sitting there in real time knowing, wow, she is not for me.
Yeah.
This is not going to work.
Right.
And you know what? That is such a blessing, because then you can check somebody off your list and you can kind of move forward. I mean, I could have struggled on
But
focus.
don't ghost them.
What's that?
But don't ghost them.
No.
Oh no, it
That's like
Yeah.
the rule we talk about on
yeah.
No, initially, it's
here
great
sometimes.
when you're first getting to know each other and you can get the other person to talk about themselves and you open up. But it needs to be a two-way street. There needs to be some sort of a balance in talking and listening.
Right.
But this two-way street concept isn't just with communication. It's kind of with everything in a relationship. It's we help each other out. We support each other. Sometimes you're having a bad day and I need to take care of some of the responsibilities, or another day I'll have a bad day and I'm going to need your support. That kind of stuff, back and forth. And it's not necessarily about keeping score either. It's just being there for each other.
Right.
And having something like a balance.
Right.
Did you hear that there's an analogy that was given in a conference a couple of years ago? It was about riding a tandem bicycle, and she was talking about about somebody in the front, somebody in the back, and if you can get to the point where you're able to kind of feel it, when the other one's tired or struggling, you can pick up the pace so that so that you're still able to go forward and at a good pace. But it's and it's the same with life, is that if you know that your significant other is struggling, you can pitch in and be like, I will make up for whatever we need. So it's a really, I mean, that's the point she was trying to make. But it's important to know that early. It's like, this is the type of I mean, well, I'm saying like early, but is this the type of person that's going to support me when I'm struggling? Or are they just
Having,
going to
having you said that, that's exactly how birds are able to fly long distances. The way they fly in that V formation,
Yeah.
the lead one takes on the most of the work, but the way they fly in that V formation, all the ones behind are able to fly on the current or the air, whatever that comes from in front of them. So when the lead one gets tired, he falls to the back, and another one comes up and takes his place. So in that way, they support each other. He can rest his wings a little bit, flying at the back of the V, and like that. Why can't we do that more as families, right? Why can't they be more naturally what we do?
I don't think we're always taught that.
No, we're not.
I think that there is, and I've heard this so many times of in our culture, and there's a huge difference between doctrine and culture, but a culture being like, okay, if I get married in the temple to a return missionary, everything's going to work out. And
Nope.
that's so not the case.
Nope.
But you need to have the skills.
Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of skills, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the other thing Christina mentioned was boundaries. I'm huge on boundaries. Boundaries have become a huge priority for me. Respecting another person's boundaries. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't throw out the book called Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. You can find it on Amazon or wherever. There's boundaries in dating, boundaries in marriage. These are all separate books. Boundaries with kids, and I believe some of them even have a workbook that go along with them. I haven't done it. I actually got the boundaries audiobook from the library, and it's been great.
Yeah.
So if you can't find it, check out your library and maybe find
Sounds great.
But I think what a good question about boundaries though is, how do you set boundaries? I mean, I'd like to hear examples, because boundaries is not the easiest topic, the easiest thing to do, especially when you're trying to impress somebody.
Right. Well, that's a good point. In before dating,
Mm-hmm.
you really need to, or maybe as you're starting to date, maybe you don't know what your boundaries are. You need to focus on defining your boundaries, communicating your boundaries, and then not being afraid to defend your boundaries. Right. And that's a start. Saying, hey, this is what my boundaries are, and then make sure they're upheld because you deserve to have your boundaries not violated.
Right. But on the other side of that too, I mean, it's nice if you know or when you know what your boundaries are. But I think another point of view is when you're dating, it's a process. You will find out what your boundaries are along the way. Maybe date one is like too much of a talker, maybe not for me.
Yeah.
Then you kind of set you set a precedence of like what your dates might look like, or what you're looking for as far as communication is concerned. And maybe no swearing, no whatever, or no dad jokes, I don't know. So I think setting the boundaries is great, but also a learning process. It's something to discover along the way. And no dad jokes. Oh no, sorry about
Oh,
No,
God,
no,
it's-
that's a
so
no, no
many of
goer.
you.
Yeah. David
Maybe
and I, we're out. We're out, David.
we're
Yeah.
out.
You got to wait till David might actually get away with it because David's
Right.
a pretty funny guy. But
But I
That-
think again,
that's
it's a process, and it's something, and that's why I think personally for me, dating um is fun and miserable. Fun in a way because I'm discovering more of what I like and what I don't like, and then we move, thank you next, or swipe left, whatever. And
yeah,
then if miserable because it's uncomfortable, you got to put yourself out there again. But these things needs to happen. If the bigger goal is to be in a relationship, or be married or whatnot, the little steps needs to happen along the way. We have to open up. We have to, do our own homework, as far as, knowing, getting to know ourselves, especially when we go through such a life changing events like divorce, or such a big breakup or broken engagement, or if you lost your person, your love of your life. I think time will allow you to go through that process, and it's okay if you kind of feel miserable along the way, to acknowledge all the emotions, as Doug was telling earlier. Totally okay to go through that, simmer the thoughts, the feelings. But I think life happens when you make it happen for you. Like,
yeah. That's
go
what I do.
out on dates,
Yeah.
swipe left and right, or no judgment as far as what you want to do, because this is your life. You get to define that, and you get only one.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll have a quick example with that. I've listened to the music from Phantom of the Opera since the '90s, I think, and it wasn't until I got divorced that I actually went and saw it at downtown Salt Lake at the Eccles Theater, third row, opening night, by myself, and it was fantastic. I loved it. I lived my life, made my life happen. People asked me, "Are you taking your kids?" I'm not taking my kids. No, they wouldn't appreciate it. Forget it. And I went by myself.
they might be scared.
Yeah, maybe
They were little.
they just would not appreciate it. And I that was, I made life happen for me in that moment. I was living my best life in that moment. Carpe diem. Robin Williams, seize the day.
I
yeah.
think that you
And
Love it.
talk about doing these things by yourself. I think that's really important to be able to, with your confidence is, I mean, what do you think, Doug, about being able to, like, if you're divorced or just single in general, about, being able to do things alone, like dinner, movies?
I generally speaking, I would rather share a positive experience with another person, generally speaking. But I think it's important to get yourself into a place where you're comfortable and okay with doing some things alone, right? That means that you're putting yourself in a healthy place for yourself, and that's part of getting yourself ready for a relationship. that you're okay with yourself, right? If you're not sure, I think Christina asked how do you define your boundaries. I think that book Boundaries will really help. I don't know much about what the workbook does to go along with that, but and I haven't specifically looked at boundaries in dating. I just looked at the boundaries book. But take a look at it if you can. Get a hold of it. Find somebody's copy. Get the audiobook, whatever, and that will help you define your boundaries
Mhm.
and realize how important you are. It really stood out for me when I did define my boundaries to somebody, and I was very clear, and then they violated them,
Mm,
and it was hurtful, but it was also a blessing because now I know what that feels like.
right.
I don't want people to have to go through having their boundaries violated to know what that feels like. Just know it sucks.
Yeah.
You
Right.
don't want it to happen, and I learned it so well that I know that I don't want to be doing that to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to be that guy violating somebody else's boundaries because I know how horrible it feels.
And the more confident you are in yourself and your availability to like survive the failure of a relationship or whatever, the
Right.
better you are at enforcing boundaries,
Right.
because it's a sign of self-respect. If you don't respect yourself, love yourself, and it doesn't mean you don't care about the other person,
Yeah.
but if you respect yourself, then it's really important to say, I need to feel safe within these boundaries. And if they're pushing against them, it's not. And I was never taught boundaries growing up.
No, me neither.
Me
I
neither.
never knew I needed
Yeah.
them. I never knew I
So
needed them.
Uh,
Um,
I think with boundaries though, we have to, it all comes down to like our personal core values. What are those? List down your personal core values, because the word violation is really go hand in hand with boundaries. So what is it that you're willing to tolerate and not tolerate?
yeah,
And at the same time, it's other than your personal core values, it's your belief system.
yeah,
So what is your belief system? And then that can define those boundaries for you. And if you relate that to dating, or even being in a relationship, all in the process, that will be so helpful down the road, because
Right.
you're able to communicate that. Then you're able to be honest about it, because at the end of the day, your personal values needs to be respected. You need to respect yourself as well. Inviting another person in your life is such a big step that we all don't want it to take it lightly. But again, it has to be connected to your personal core values and beliefs.
Yeah, you don't want to set boundaries just because you feel uncomfortable, or because
Right, right,
you are easily hurt, or
right.
because you are. I mean, it's okay to set those boundaries for those reasons, but those are signs that you haven't healed well.
yeah,
When we talk about healthy boundary setting, what I love about it is we're not blaming the other person anymore. We're
Mhm.
saying to ourselves, I'm teaching them how to treat me, and I need to own that. I need to take the power back from them and say, listen, if I don't tell you this is not okay with me, how can I expect you to honor that? There's nothing to honor. If I tell you that and you dishonor it, okay, now it's more about you. But if I never express that, you could just be unwittingly crossing my boundaries, and I don't know that I can hold you accountable for that. So I mean, there are obviously boundaries that are so clear that any of us know them. They're like societal, or something like that. But I have my own personal ones, and I think that is probably one of the top 3 greatest lessons I learned from divorce,
Yes.
was how to actually value myself enough to remain true to my core and not let people either walk over me or ignore me, or any of these things without me giving them feedback. you
Mm-hmm.
know
so Doug,
yeah.
I'm curious, how would you, in this whole situation, or maybe even boundaries in general, how would you maybe involve the Lord in that, in setting those things?
Well, I mean that goes to kind of what Kristen was talking about is talking understanding what your core values are, right? And those things that these are things about me, my life, that are immovable. These things are not going to change. Like, you know, I, if you want me to stop going to church, move on. You know, that's one of my
right.
core values. I'm not gonna follow away. If you want me to you know, start drinking or smoking or doing drugs or whatever, goodbye. Like, we can be friends maybe, but we're not going to have a long-term relationship like the way that you're thinking,
Yeah.
you know. And it's you know, and so for me, some of that has you know, involving the Lord, like you said, is, I guess, a little bit easy in the sense that I grew up in the church. I already know what some of my core values are. I have a testimony of what some of those core values are and what blessings they can give. Those are some of those things that I know are, I want to be immovable. Those are rock. Those are anchor for me. Those are you know, in stone. And if you want me to change those, well, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not going to do that. You know, and outside of that, you know, I think you already alluded to it. Is just spend some time on your knees, right? Humbly ask in prayer. I mentioned before everyone got on that I like that picture behind you. Um, uh, yeah, um, and it's he's there waiting to help us, extending a hand. Uh, I know that you know, as most of us have uh, you know, been parents in our lives, is we generally want our kids to be happier than we were growing up. We want their lives to be better than what ours were growing up. And I know that our Heavenly Father wants that for us too. You know, He wants us to be happy. He wants us to have those blessings that He has already waiting for us. We just say, "Hey, I'm ready to take that on."
Ah,
I think that's an important point, because I think as we are connected to Christ, he teaches us what it's like to be seen as we are seen. And then we need to really look for, maybe this is like the fast track to good dating, smart dating.
mhm.
We need to look for similar feelings in the presence of other people. You know,
Yeah.
when I'm in the presence of God, how do I feel? And I don't expect to feel exactly like that with human beings, but I should feel pretty close to that, you
Mhm.
know, with other human beings. They're allowed to have a bad day here and there, but I
Yeah.
need to feel valued. I need to feel like they can see the best in me, even when I struggle, basically.
And
I
I,
think one of the best questions I had when I went on a first date was from this guy. After the date, he asked me like, "Hey, what's your energy like after our date? Is it depleted or are you more energized?" And I'm like, "Ooh, good question." Because if the answer is depleted, then no second date whatsoever, because it's just not the energy that I want to vibe with.
Right.
And if it's something that lifts you up, then go on a second date. I think that's my um I think it's a good indicator if the date went well. And I think we can all be honest at some point when we start, letting them know how it is, like
Mhm.
on a first date.
The
Is it
complicated part, though, is what if my physical attraction energy is up,
mhm.
but my spiritual, emotional, and intellectual energy is down?
But
And I think what we got to be careful of is saying, "Oh, well, hey, at least we got the attraction," and then we got to see ourselves as whole people too.
right, but I think for us, like if we're, I mean, for some, it would be more of the what's the first date look like, because
Right.
the other talks, the other serious talks that follow, or the following dates, will be based on that first date. And
Sure.
sometimes,
mindset.
yeah, I've gone through. I mean, I kind of put a label on myself the past few years that I'm a first dater, which means I only go out on first dates, because I don't know if it was just hard to sometimes like determine, oh, is it really us vibing, or is it just that chemical attraction that we have,
Right.
and I think for me, my indicator is, how does the communication flow? Can we talk about anything without being awkward or embarrassed? Or I think at the end of the day, I just want to be myself. If I'm able to talk about my weight and my insecurities, I think that's a big indicator that I'm probably healing and have a level of confidence that you're important to me, that I want you to know about these things. I want you to get to know me. Am I going to be that
Right.
insecure person 100% of the time? Maybe. Is that something that person can handle? Maybe. But we will never know unless we have this kind of conversation and the vibe.
So one thing I've experienced in kind of something we've touched on, but not a lot, is the idea of like surrendering into Heavenly Father in your dating life. I mean, for years, I mean, I've been divorced for 9 years. You said you've been divorced, what, Doug, 4 years?
4 years. Yeah.
Okay. And so I don't know, have you ever come to the point where you felt like I mean, I know I've experienced this where I felt like, I'm just not doing a great job. Like I'll have, date a woman or two for a while and it just doesn't turn out real well. So just, telling your father, say, you know what, I have to give this to you because you know me, you want what's best for me. I mean, what is maybe your thoughts on that?
When I first got divorced, and I went to I was early on in being single. I went to a fireside and I met somebody who had been divorced and single a lot longer than me, and I started picking his brain and asking him questions, about people, trying to get to know people. Hey, who's that? Who's that? Whatever. And the way he talked to people, or talked about people, I should say, was, to me, it was very pessimistic. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, is this what's going to happen to me? Do I become jaded when I'm divorced for this long? And now, being divorced for this long, I can see kind of how you get jaded, but I've made it a focused effort to try and stay, very optimistic. And like you alluded to, involving the Lord in your activities. Help me to have wisdom. Help me to guide me. We're imperfect, and we only have our limited knowledge of things, and I need all the help I can get. I don't know about you, but help me to know what to pray for. I know I've prayed for the wrong things before, and uh, it's just important to find your way to stay optimistic and hopeful, and don't give up, and keep trying, and know that things are not going to happen on your timeline. I related what I heard was a fictitious quote from God one time recently, uh, where God says, "Oh, you have a plan for your life? That's cute." Point is, like, we have free agency and we can make choices, but sometimes it's not our plan what matters. I don't know that it was necessarily my plan to move to Utah. God said move to Utah. I said no. 6 weeks later, uh, he told my wife the same thing. I didn't tell her. We both got the same impression to move to Utah, and I said no. Can you believe that? At the time, I said no. I swept that under the rug and I didn't tell anybody. And my heart sank when she said, "I think we should move to Utah," because then it became more real. And then I'm like, well, you know what? It's a bad time to move. If we move now and sell our house, we'll be lucky if we break even. So guess what? If we're supposed to move and this is God's plan, He's going to provide a way, right? Right. That was my mistake. Because of course He did. And we moved.
And that was not the way you had anticipated.
No, I just say I'm glad He didn't ask me to go to Nineveh, because we know how well that worked out for Jonah.
Right. Hey, he actually was successful. It just didn't work out for him in the end because he was mad they didn't get whacked.
Yeah, and I actually got to drive down to Utah, and I didn't have to be transported by a whale.
Right? Exactly. Um, I like the way this is going. I Is there anything we all want to ask along these lines, along the lines that we're on right now? Christina, Michael,
Well,
if not, I'm ready to move on to another aspect of it, but
Um, we can move on.
Okay,
Let's
let's
say-
just move.
Amy made a comment a little while back that I saw that I wanted to address. Amy Nolan said, let's see, I don't know how far back it is. Basically, when we were talking about doing stuff on your own, she said, I'm screwed because I'm either with my kids or with with a friend of mine, and I guess I wanna emphasize that even if you do have your kids all the time, find a way to get you time. Find a way to have time for yourself. Find a way to take care of yourself. I'm bad at that. I'm trying to do a lot better, but it's all about self-care, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
You talked about at the very beginning about learning who you are, learning, and not just, there's learning who you are as a child of God. That's probably the most important thing, but learning who you are. And Christine kind of talked about this, and because if you know that you can be by yourself, then, and you can be there, because to me, confidence is learning that no matter what goes wrong, you're going to be okay.
Yes.
And most of us have been in like really hard situations where maybe we've had self-doubt or it's just been really stressful. But then we can say, looking back, I can personally can say, you know what? I've been okay to get through really, really hard stuff. And that confidence can carry me over to the future. And it helps you to know who you are
Right.
and build these positive characteristics in you, in yourself.
That brings up something really important. And that just is that the healing process, I think some of it involves solitude,
Yes.
Yes. And I think that's really important. I saw a post on a single site the other day, and my response to it was basically that I think there is some healing we can only do on our own.
Yes.
I think there's some healing we can only do with others. And I think there's some healing we can only do with that special someone.
Right.
And I see all of that healing being influenced by God. God's in the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
But I think those three things, myself, others, and him or her, there's just something about that relationship, and the others, I include children and friends and, ward members and stuff like that. But how have you felt about that, Doug? Have you noticed that there's just some things I cannot do alone, but other things I must do alone?
Yes, yeah, and again, this may be a little bit of a vulnerable thing, but as a function of going through my divorce, actually, I had to do this hard thing about forgiveness, and there was a couple people in my life that I needed to extend forgiveness to, and it's not about them, it's about me releasing that burden, that weight, or as John, by the way, says, he does a talk called "What's in Your Backpack," and it's about these rocks that you're carrying, this unnecessary weight that you don't need to carry because the Savior's already atoned for that, and that the atonement is not just for those who have sinned, but those who have been sinned against. And I worked hard to extend forgiveness to one of the individuals, but the other one, I'm not ready for whatever reason. It's not logical. It's entirely emotional. But I put that in a proverbial shoebox and put that shoebox in the back of the closet, and it's still waiting there. And I feel like I'm not supposed to address that until I have that person in my life who is meant to help me through that, and then I'm supposed to help them with something. But a lot of other things I've been able to do either on my own or with the help of my Heavenly Father, and get that strength and do the work,
Yeah, I agree. There's things to do on your own. The last woman that I was involved with, we knew that we both had things to heal, and that it wasn't going to be easy, but they were only going to come out within the context of being in a relationship. Those triggers, those weakness, those sore spots. And she literally said to me, "Are you ready to go to hell with me? Go through hell with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And it was, but I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot about myself.
Right.
And now I can be healthier in relationships. Now I'm healthier in relationship, but if I hadn't gone through that, who knows?
Yeah.
I think that brings up another issue is, can we learn even from the hardship of life? What can that teach us? Basically?
Absolutely. No, I have a woman I'm involved with right now in dating that we're exclusive, but the two before that were horrible. I mean, it's nothing against them. I'm just saying the situation.
You're talking about the relationship, not the people.
Yes. I mean, they're both great, and I'm sure that they'll find somebody great and mesh well with them. But if I hadn't had those really difficult experiences, that pain, that suffering, I would not appreciate what I have now. The safety, the joy, the support, kindness, love. I wouldn't know what that feels like, especially the safety thing that I'm talking about, is that
Right.
I didn't feel safe in either of those. Well, I mean, a little bit, but not really that much. But now I feel safe, and it's a huge feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's almost like, I don't know if you've seen these quotes, but like, the hardest paths lead to the best destinations, and things like that.
And the best views and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
like the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've hiked to the top of a couple of places, and it's like it was pretty brutal. But when you get to the top, it's like, it really is kind of the hardest, hardest walks lead to the best places. So it's almost like you got to earn it a little bit. So Doug, has the adversity taught you?
It's definitely made me who I am today. It's always been easier to learn from the mistakes of others, but I've noticed that I learned the lesson harder, or I learned the lesson better, meaning it gets more ingrained in me when it's a mistake that I've made on my own.
Right.
Like, if I see someone touch a hot stove, I'm like, oh, that's hot, I shouldn't do that. But if I touch a hot stove, I'm like, oh, I'm never going to do that again.
Right.
Right? It's different. It's more intense, right? Because we've experienced it ourselves. We know the pain that brings.
For sure.
I have a son who was he was 10, I think, when this happened. I was showing him, and I lit a road flare just to kind of, I was trying to teach him different things, and threw it on the asphalt, and we watched it, burn everything. And my son, the oldest son, after a minute, it burned out, and he's like, I wonder if it's still hot. And he touched it, and just burned his finger. And he wouldn't have learned that if I just, no, Eric, it's hot. I mean, I tried to tell him, but he
was already determined
what he wants. But I really like what you're saying, Doug, is that, I think the best lessons we learn from difficult experiences on our own. It's not that somebody can tell us. I mean, it might guide us, but the real lesson, is.
I would much rather not go through the hard thing and the pain if I can gain wisdom from somebody else's mistake. If I can, like, that's one of the reasons that we listen to our prophets and we read our scriptures, so that hopefully we can learn from the mistakes of others in the past and not repeat those. Right? That's the point of one of the reasons why we learn history. Right? So we can learn from that and do better and be better and gain wisdom from that.
Yeah, they don't write in the Book of Mormon like people like Laman and Lemuel or King Noah to give us good examples of how to live our lives. They tell those stories to say, hey, here's what happens when you abandon God and you go down the wrong path.
Right.
It's not going to lead to a happy ending, and not even fun along the way.
Wait, what? They're not the heroes of the story? Not that they were. I thought I thought they were the heroes
in their own minds. Yes.
I think,
but probably not now, though.
I think if there is a book, it's definitely a comedy book, but I think it's the Book of Laman, or it's either the Book of Laman or the Book of Lemuel. The way they tell the story, yes, for sure, it's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I think where they are now, they're probably looking back and go, dude, I was such a punk. Uh, I'm right where I belong right now. So, which is probably not the best place to be, but I want to throw in another piece to it, and that just is because I think if God tries to teach us with nothing but adversity, I think even the best of people could get overwhelmed by that. And so,
Yeah.
what I've also noticed in my life, I've had some really painful setbacks, but I've also noticed like tons of miracles,
Yeah,
like tons of, and I think I appreciate it more because of how painful it was when these miracles happened in my life, like somebody who would kind of take me in, or someone that advised me really well, or like like even something as simple as like I happened to leave a towel on the sink and I happened to have messy hands, and then the towel was there. I had forgotten to put it in the water, and so it was just very convenient to wipe my hands off. And I almost see stuff like that, and I'm like going, "Thank you, Jesus, for looking out for me." So that I wasn't even inconvenienced. I feel like there are so many little blessings in life
I
that
have
happen.
a little more of an intense example, and maybe it's uh, made up, maybe it's not, but let's say you're stuck in traffic. Nobody really wants to be stuck in traffic, whatever. Maybe there's something that caused a traffic slowdown. How do we know that that traffic slowdown is not what prevented you from having a car accident further down the road?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know what I mean? It's you don't know, and or just you know, so some little minor inconvenience in life, we don't know that could be what prevented something more catastrophic, later on.
Absolutely. That's a good point.
I know it's just one way of, I guess, looking at things a little bit more optimistic. We don't know, and sometimes it just kind of helps to look at things that way a little bit. You know, there's I don't always know the reason. I went through a very, for me, painful divorce. It was my level 10.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
hated it. I certainly don't wish to go through that ever again. It sucked. It was a very dark period for me. However, I would not have become who I am today without going through that experience, and I love who I am today. I love that I got this perspective of who I am as a child of God. I love that I have empathy. I love that I'm able to now connect people and bring people together and talk to people. And all these collection of things of who I am now, I feel like God has given me this set of superpowers. I know they're blessings, but it makes me feel better to call them superpowers.
Right.
Um, in order to help bless and change the lives of others. And I know that that's how I'm supposed to be using those gifts, is to bless the lives of others. And I've created events and activities where people can meet and enjoy activities. And I know that some people have met at my activities and have later gotten married.
Hmm.
And I'm changing people's lives. But
So
it's
knowing they're having some joy that has been elusive to you, at least in the most recent times, that sort of like makes the lessons worth it. It's kind of like, and eventually I think that'll pay off for you too, for all of us.
Yeah.
Right.
I know I don't want to I sound like it's me doing all these things. It's through the blessings and gifts that God has given me to be able to do these things. So I totally give him, all of the
And
glory and credit.
but when you use those gifts, your light shines. You're more attractive, and I see that in you, Doug.
Amen.
We've only
Yeah.
met once at the Boise Bash, the second one, I believe.
Yeah.
But people notice. I mean, your name has come up, and it's just like, wow,
Mhm.
this guy is great, and it's that light. You attract other light, and so you can get the woman that you are, the other significant other that you want, if you share that light with others, because it's attracted. Darkness isn't attracted to light.
Oh
I
yeah, I
mean,
found it out.
Yeah.
That's
I,
who I was before. That's who I was for most of my life. That's what I found out. And since getting that light, and someone else had to point that out for me, it's like someone told me, like, people are attracted to you now because they feel that spirit that you have. I'm like, really? I took my daughter to a singles drive-in movie event, and I was just going around saying hi to people that I didn't know, which was most people because it was early on in being single. And my daughter said, "Dad, I wish I was as outgoing as you." And I go, "Jennifer, nobody's ever accused me of being that before." And I had to think and self reflect. And I'm like, wow, I guess I am. I'm just going out and talking to people. And she witnessed that and she pointed that out to me. And it took her, uh, pointing that out for me to realize I guess I am outgoing now, whereas the whole rest of my life I was not.
Hmm.
And that's such a blessing that your kids to see things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's value in knowing that you are gracious and kind to yourself. Is after the adversity or while you go through the adversity, it reminds you that we're just being human right now. We're living this life. We're susceptible to pain. But I think on a personal level, that's what I learned with my divorce as well, is to be kind. I was so hard on myself, thinking I was unlovable because when you go through these kinds of breakup, it just crush your self-worth and self-confidence. Other self stuff is rock bottom, and for you to be able to come out of that, that's huge because sometimes getting up and getting ready for the day was the hardest part of the day.
Yeah.
So I think learning grace and kindness along the way also allows us to experience that despite the fact this is what I'm giving myself. And when you're gracious and kind to yourself, your energy changes. You're more forgiving and you're more accepting.
Hmm.
No self judgment whatsoever. And I think that's beautiful and powerful at the same time.
But like you said, you have to do it to yourself first.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because how you feel about yourself, like Doug, you were talking about that guy you met at the dance that was very pessimistic.
Mhm.
How does he view himself?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
women that, like the one I want, but the ones that that have exude this light, they're not going to be attracted to that.
I got
They're
the
going to recognize it right away and be like, no,
Oh,
yeah,
it's not for me.
I got
yeah.
the impression that he doesn't quite know who he is, or have that perspective of self-worth, because he also kind of dates uh, this is a judgment word, but forgive me. He also dates kind of shallow. He told me once, I don't go on a date unless I'm 75, 80% sure that it's going to end in a makeout. I'm like, really? Really?
Or a
Hmm.
or a rebound. And my thoughts on that is like that's okay if that's his goal. Again, no judgment if that works for him. Totally cool. Again, it's just a matter of like who do we want to associate ourselves with when it comes to dating and socializing. um I think let's all be honest, at some point in our lives that when we go through a breakup, you're going to go through a rebound phase. That's kind of like, I don't think you can skip that because you will never know on the other side of the rebound phase unless you go through it. That's kind of when you'll
Just
know
don't
that.
marry during it.
Right, right. There has to be a
That's
healthy
the
a healthy
shoot,
balance about it.
what
I think it's
have I
it's
done?
human nature to we're geared to be connected to other human beings. That's just us being human. And I think what we do during those phase, do we want to stay in the rebound phase? Sure, until it serves its purpose. Now it's if it no longer serves the purpose, move on, and then you find out that I don't want that rebound phase, or I learned something here and there, and you're growing, and then you get to know yourself, and then it's a stepping stone towards your bigger goal of like dating long term. Yeah.
I want to share something that directly correlates to what you just said about that community. That this post that I saw um, today, where it says, I think it was Brene Brown. Everybody heard of Brene Brown? If not, look
I
her
Oh
love
up.
yeah.
her.
Who told a story about a village where all the women washed clothes together down by the river. When they all got washing machines, there was a sudden outbreak of depression and no one could figure out why. It wasn't the washing machines in and of themselves, it was the absence of time spent doing things together. It was the absence of community. So in that sense, we don't just want it. In a sense, we kind of need it. We need that belonging. We need that
Yeah,
together.
that's huge. I think that's one reason the waiting lists for therapy are so long right now is we've basically been separated from each other.
Yeah, what
You
did you say?
know,
Like 3 months?
uh, Salt Lake, 3 to 5 months is not unheard of. And, where my clinic is, we're at about 2 months, a waiting list. I mean, we can plug them in every once in a while, but you don't have any guarantee for 2 months. That's a long time to wait if you've already waited too long,
Yeah, and
you
if
know.
you're emotionally or socially hemorrhaging and you have to wait 2 months, oh my goodness.
Yeah, so at some point, a lot of those people are going to go to a hospital, and if the hospitals fill up, a lot of those people are going to jail. So you got to be careful. There's a ripple effect. Doug, when you brought that up, I was thinking to myself, maybe one thing we need to be really careful about is judging people based on the hardships they've been through, whether that's a couple of divorces, or maybe they've been abused or cheated on, or maybe they've had an addiction of some kind, or maybe they have had a spouse die.
Yeah.
They're a widow or a widower. And I think the reason it's not so much what happened to them, we really need to pay more attention to the response,
Yeah, I think
because it's either going to soften you or harden you. And I can tell the people who've been hardened by it. And to me, that's one of the surest signs they haven't healed. But if it has softened you, like you've been through all that crap and you are actually really sweet, I'm telling that I might give you more points for that than having not gone through all of that and be sweet. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think the advice that I give people is, unless, if you go on a first date with somebody, unless you see something that's just a blatant, big red flag, understand that, one, you don't know their background yet.
Mhm.
You don't know what they're going through. Understand that even you have had off days, right? I say, I encourage people, give someone, you know,
So a second and third date shouldn't be that uncommon.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, is give them a second or and third date if you can, to see, because the point is, look for patterns of behavior.
Right.
Right, and that's through all of dating. Look for patterns of behavior
Yeah, I like
and
that.
understand that there are one-offs.
Yeah,
Um,
one thing that, and I've had this conversation with Celeste and Everett, as I'm having it with my girlfriend, is we talk about red flags.
yeah,
And like, just for her answer, she told me this, and she said I could open up and tell people about this, but as Everett's talking to her, he'll say something and she'll kind of take a step back and be like, whoa, what does that mean? And she'll be kind of thinking about it for like a day or two. And then finally she reconnects with Everett and it's like, hey, so what did you mean by that? And they actually discuss it, things that she could easily say, this is a red flag,
yeah,
and walk away.
And you might find out it's not so much a red flag.
Absolutely. It's about context.
Yeah.
Once we clarify and communicate, we find out that, okay, it's not where I'm coming from, but it's more of maybe an orange flag or
Yeah, or
a
maybe
yellow flag.
it's just a misunderstanding. People use different
Yeah.
words to communicate. And I mean, I've had those all in my, dating life. And, there's relationship I value, and I'm really willing to put in the effort to try to talk about it and try to like get through it. Because if you can see the value in a relationship or in another person, I think you should be able to be willing to work hard for that, or to at least get clarification instead of like an immediate judgment.
yeah,
Like what you said, Doug, is like, you
yeah,
or maybe it was John, is that, knowing where a person came from is really important to that, so that, you can be a little bit more, I guess I don't really know how to exactly say this, but you know, you can just see people and the struggles that they've had in their life. Like John said, is, you know, how do they come out of that? And so at the
Right.
same time, it's like, you know, are they saying that because of how they came out of that? And just, you know, context, and are they self-aware? Are they trying to heal? Are they making these steps?
Mhm.
Because if you date somebody and they say, you know, one, if you can date two different people and on the same date they say the same thing, but if one person you can see becoming self-aware and is trying to heal versus the other person's completely ignorant of themselves and the harm that that thing can do, I mean, I see that as like, you know, this is the person I would really want to spend more time around, invest a little bit more time in the relationship. This one's a lot easier to walk away.
Right.
Right. And I think there's also the idea of sometimes when we start dating is we create this idea of the person that we want them to be instead of like who they really are. And we get stuck in that phase that I want this person to be XYZ. And then you start changing them instead of genuinely being interested in getting to know them as the person, as who they really are.
And what's amazing is that person of who they really are can be far, you know, can just blow your mind compared to what you wanted them
Right.
to be, and just be like, wow, you know, this is, you're just glad that you didn't have those expectations. And what I'm just saying, you have expectations in a relationship. I'm in recovery, and one thing we always talk about is the dangerous how dangerous expectations are, because expectations can lead to future resentments. And so
Yeah.
if you don't address that and recognize what these expectations are, then you know you can go to difficult places.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
do think that sometimes our our concerns about red flags will be validated, that they really are red flags and they are not in a good place. The first question I ask myself then, at least at this point in my dating life, is um, rather than sit there and say, wow, she's really in a dark place. The first question I ask myself, if that's true, how bright are you right now?
Yeah.
You know, in other words, if I am attracting that, if I am spending time with that, if I'm devoting, you know, she could be a great barometer for me of where I'm at. And really, of the two of us, I'm the only one that can change the level of my light, you know. And so I need to get back to focusing on myself. It's not just an invitation to end the relationship, a red flag. It's also an invitation to look inside myself and say, what is my sort of mirrored red flag that invited that in, you know? And the other thing is, I believe we don't write people off. You know,
Yeah.
they could have had a red flag 6 months ago, but does that mean I never revisit the relationship? Maybe I do, you know, I don't know. I think some red flags are harder to overcome than others, honestly.
For
But
sure.
I think for me, I heard this earlier too. Like aside from confidence being sexy, self-respect is also sexy.
right.
Because then you get to define what's good and what's not good for you. At the end of the day, you go home to yourself. You know, you go into yourself and you have and you know the capacity to live the life that you want. So if you have that, when you have that self-respect, then I think it becomes clearer. It doesn't happen overnight. Again, life is a process. Life is progress over perfection. I think progress over perfection is doable, and so human-like.
Hmm.
So I think for me, it's that we develop ourselves as we go along the way, and sometimes when and I was just reading through the chat as well that there's just we set these rules of like timeline and whatnot. At the end of the day, you get to know yourself and like when do I get to date? Is it 6 months to a year or maybe down the road more than a year? But I think for me, go live the life whether it goes or it results to a relationship or friendship or nothing at all, because at the end of the day you'll get to know yourself even better, and that's the most important thing, is that you get to know yourself, and then you
Hmm.
exude that energy, then you attract that energy, and then you become this beautiful person all over, and
I
it's
love that.
to
Yeah,
hit
that's
because
great.
I
always
think that
progress.
I think that goes back to what Michael said too, that rather than get too lost in the outcome, just focus on the process. You know, just it's a process of growth, like you're saying, Christina. And I think that that's what we lose along the way sometimes, is we forget that I don't have to figure it all out right now.
Yeah.
This does not have to end in marriage. This does not have to, this doesn't, may not even have to end at all. Or, you know, I think when we start to say, oh, it has to be this way, it has to be this way, we really, I think it's almost like telling the spirit, you don't get to guide me because I've already figured it out.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's,
I have a question for you, Doug. I have just to kind of give you a little scenario, just something that happened to see your thoughts on this. So, with with my current girlfriend, I was the one that I said the L word first, and she's like, I'm not there. And then the next thing is like, I asked her after that happened, I asked her, I would like to be exclusive with you, and she's like, I'm not there yet. And so, and it's interesting because like in a movie or in a television show, that person comes back and they talk to their friends and they say, wow, and people say, does that, can a relationship survive that? Absolutely. You don't have to follow anybody else's rules. It's your decision. And as a couple, I mean, do you agree or disagree with that, Doug?
Yeah, so this is something that maybe where I'm maybe I'm different than most people, because for most of the people that I've gone out on at least a date with, or dated, um, generally speaking, I'm still friends with them, and
Yeah.
we're not, I'm not in a relationship with those people, but I can still talk to them if I see them at an event or activity. I'm comfortable, talking to them and whatever, being around them, for almost everyone, that if you can, end on at least good terms or mutual, that's best. That's not always possible necessarily for everybody, and I understand that. um, but yeah, where you have, going back to that communication, that understanding, that active listening, that openness, that safe space, where obviously you felt like you were in a safe space where you trusted her, and you felt like you could communicate that to her. And even if there were, um, you know, maybe, I don't know what the wording might be, less than favorable repercussions, you could still talk about that
Yeah.
and have a relationship and move on and be like, okay, that's fine, you know, that's okay. And you're not there, I am. Let's, talk about it and we'll move on.
So that's actually a lot of what happened. And what we talked about later after she was there, I said, I said, both of those times, I knew you weren't there, but I also know you well enough to know that you kind of needed that idea to, it was almost like preparation, or kind of a type thing of saying, hey, this is where I'm at. It's okay if you're not there. I just want you to be thinking about this,
I think it's still okay to know where each other are, even
Yeah,
if we're
I think
in
it's a good
different places.
Yeah, she is a peach, by the way.
What's that?
She is a peach, by the way.
I know.
She's a peach of
Oh
a
my
girl.
gosh.
Met her,
amazing.
met her a couple of weeks ago at the karaoke party, and we talked about you, of course.
Yeah, she just told me that before we got on there. I was like,
That is precious and darling.
I am so, that's what I said. The difference is, like, I have the safety in that relationship that I didn't understand how important that was until I was with her.
Right.
And yeah,
that's huge.
that's maybe the biggest thing. We have so many, attractions on different levels, different areas, but ultimately that safety and that ability to have difficult conversations. I mean, it's not even like we have to set it up for a difficult conversation. We just be like, hey, I'm struggling with this today, or I had this happen. It's kind of, I've had this history of doing this, and where we can understand each other. And it's that safety.
So
Right.
knowing how that feels, how she created that for you, you know now how important it is for you to reciprocate that and create that
Yes.
for her. How good that felt.
Yep.
So it's that warm and fuzzy feels, and that's real. I mean, it is real because you feel safe, you feel secure, you just feel it feels right, you know. And it's not going to be warm and fuzzy feels all the time,
Right.
because you're going to be going through, the getting to know deeper, and better. But I think that's just an indicator that your energy is vibing. I don't know. I use the word energy a lot and vibing a lot because
Mhm.
I experienced that personally. And that's how I determine, like, am I ready for dating? Am I ready to pursue a relationship of some sort? Again, I can't define. I just feel like I can't define my life all the time. I have to go with the flow at some point and just let go and surrender and see what life has to offer, instead of like
Mhm.
trying to determine everything that is by the rules, by the timeline and all that. It's exhausting to live
Yes,
that way, I think.
somebody back in the chat said, "How do you know when you're ready to date?" And I really don't think that there's any mathematical equation to
No.
figure it out. It's like you dip your toes in the water and see how it feels.
Yes.
And if it doesn't feel right, you
Then
withdraw and you work on yourself a little more and try again later and see what feels right for you, because everyone's been through different experiences. We all
Mhm.
view the world through the lenses of our past experiences, and it's different for everybody. So we see, oh, that person started dating a month after he got divorced or whatever. Well, we
yeah,
don't know that he's already been working on that closure for the past year
right.
before his
Right.
divorce was final. We don't know that, you
I
know.
think that's the key, is like, it's almost like, rather than what should you date or not, is how are you going to date? Like, maybe somebody's ready to do kind of group kind of stuff. Maybe
Mhm.
somebody else is more like, I'm willing to pair off, but I just need to be clear with who I'm with, that I'm
Yeah.
just not ready to take it to anywhere serious. I just want to have fun with people and get to know people, and that kind of thing. And then that's where the boundaries come in, I think. We
Right.
can,
And I think we also have to, I mean, I went through like, who do I want? Like, I think the biggest for me was like the age range. Can I date men younger, way younger than me? I tried dating a 21-year-old.
hey,
That
he's
did not
legal.
work out.
He's legal.
It was just a first date. But I think I adjusted the age ranges to see what the communication level is. I mean, I
Hmm.
think I have an IT background, so I love data. So for me, I think, playing with the numbers, and see how that works for me was an indicator that, oh, I'm willing to try things as I go on dates. Have I dated guys my age? Yes, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older. So at this point in my life, I think I like um men that are older than me, because I feel like there's a wavelength of communication that just vibes.
Yeah.
But that's just me, and it will be different for everyone. And I think that's what the beauty.
And we're usually just better people, the older guys.
The
I'm just kidding.
So a question for you, Christina. So do you take down this information at the date you're at dinner and you're like, okay, no, hold on, I got to write that down. This is a 72%. Okay, question. All right, let's go to the next question.
that to be kept on a spreadsheet.
Oh, that might be a
No.
little
I
bit
think
too
for me it's just
meticulous.
really like going with the flow. And but I think at the back of I need to support my actions with some kind of data. I just enjoy it the way it is. And I find out that, oh, I like younger versus, I mean, older versus younger guys. And then I get to stick with that. And then sometimes, you go on dates and it just doesn't work out with older guys. I'm like, okay, I got to reshuffle the age range again. Maybe this time around, I like, guys that are 2 years younger than me, not too far off. I don't know. So it's a trial and error. I think that's the beauty of it. It's miserable at times. It's not fun, but you know what? It's fun and light. Fun and light is how I see dating. When you approach it that way, less expectation, you don't get attached to an outcome, and then you see life unfold before your eyes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to interject here. I'm noticing the time,
Yes.
but I want to give Doug the last word. And this has been a great discussion. I really want to thank Michael and Christina. I have just really loved tonight. This has been such
Me
a fun
too.
experience for me. And Doug, it's been great having you on here. I have just really been impressed with a lot of the stuff you're saying. I guess the last question I just want to ask for you, and then we're going to probably go ahead and respond a little bit, but then cut the recording and go to the after party. But um, if you could summarize for you what really is like the best dating advice as far as you're concerned, and maybe it's reiterating something we've already said, but maybe there's something you feel like you may have forgotten or whatever. I mean, what would you say?
Well, besides, let's reiterate some of the stuff. Be confident, be yourself, be genuine, be sincere,
Mhm.
be real. Be yourself. Don't ever try to be someone you're not. Also, be very open, honest, be transparent, right? Um, you want a relationship that'll go the distance. Let them know who you really are. Like, and I'm not saying all at once. Definitely not. Don't open the fire hose. But sometimes you need to, have them test the waters a little bit, so that you can allow yourself to be vulnerable in by degrees,
Mhm.
maybe. Here's something that's a little bit vulnerable about me. See what they do with it. Do they protect it? Do they take care of it? Um, or
I think that's the other important thing you mentioned during this podcast was on the other end of it, let people be open with you and provide a safe space for them to do that.
yeah, absolutely. Um, and I'll also share. I wrote this little note down because I've shared this with people before, and again, this may be one of those things that other people have differing opinions on, and this is mostly for I guess the women. I think if men ask a woman on a date, they should be prepared. They should uh, value the woman enough to be prepared for that date. So if they go to pick, so women, if a guy goes to pick you up or meet you, whatever, I would say within the first 3 dates, if he says, so what do you want to do or where do you want to go, say these
Say
words.
it.
Say
Yes,
these words.
say it.
Say call me when you're ready and go home. If he goes to pick you up, get back out of the car, and while you're standing outside the door, call me when you're ready. Close the
I'm
door.
going to go
Go
do
back
another load of laundry, but you come back when you're ready for this date.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
My
Plan like
hair's not all the way dry.
Okay.
yeah. He needs to show that he values the date and you enough
Yeah.
that he's got something in
Right.
mind or more than one thing in mind, and he can say, "Hey, would you rather do this or this?" And there's one question that I tend to ask before taking someone on a date that involves food. Are you allergic to anything, or is there anything that you particularly don't like? Because I really don't want to take them to seafood if they're gonna swell up and need an EpiPen.
Yeah.
Right.
I think for us women, this is what I've learned over time is that it's okay to say what we want. If they ask us what restaurant, be prepared to have like two options
Yeah,
because then that works for you, for or for both.
Right.
I don't care. But something that you'd enjoy because once you're more comfortable in a setting that you like, then the conversation will flow. I think
How
it's that guys are. I mean, there's a sense that guys are also easy to understand because they're pretty straightforward. They're okay to say, "Hey, yes or no, right or left, burger or fries." Kind of like tell them. We need to tell them
yeah.
what we want.
I think give those options. Like for the guy, give the options because you're going to give two options, at least two options that are both comfortable for you and within your budget,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And if one of those doesn't work, then feel that
hopefully the
out.
other
Like,
one
well,
will.
you
yeah,
know,
But it shows, I like what you're saying because it shows a level of organization and purpose and the other thing, like know what they like in advance, like just know what, and then the
yeah,
two options are both things they like. And yeah, or just say, hey, I'm going to surprise you tonight. We're going to go do something. I know it's food you like, and I'll show you when we get there. I think women love that too. It
right.
just feels
Um,
nice that you care about me and that you're
right.
willing to take charge a little bit.
For
I'll
me,
I'll
I like
end
I
with
like to say when I say I like steak tonight. Okay, you figure out where to go because I want steak. How about that?
There you go.
yeah.
Fair enough. Then then guys would make the effort to find the steak that you'd love. You know.
Yeah,
That's right.
for me, if I have the time, I'm like, fine, I am grilling you a steak because that's one of my skills.
Right.
That can
Sizzler
be
it is.
Bill,
Sizzler it is. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
I'll end with this, and this may be a little bit dangerous for me, but I'll end with this. I'll put my I'm gonna put my the link to my Facebook page in the chat, and for anybody that wants to talk more, or has other
That'll be great.
questions, they can
So-
reach out to me directly because
I
there
was just
was
going to ask how we can find you on Facebook. So
yep, right there.
good for you.
I have some notes that I made a long time ago that I did a podcast that was called Three Things That Women Want and Three Things That Women Should Know Better. And since doing that one, I came up with, just from my observation, gospel according to Doug, the 4 levels of boundaries.
Nice.
Wow.
We didn't have time to
We'll
go
have
into
to go.
that,
We'll have
but
to go check that out.
if
Right, absolutely. So the link is on the chat box, everyone. So check
so
it
if
out.
people
Well,
want
Doug, thank
talk
you
to me
so
about that.
much for coming on with us tonight. It has
Yeah,
been
it's-
great talking to you.
it's been
Great
great,
hanging
yeah.
out with Michael and Christina as well.
Yes.
We're going to go ahead. I'm going to see if I can push the right buttons here. We're going to end the Facebook live
We're gonna be
stream.
live with the after party.
Yeah, and we are going to stop the recording. And so we're
Hey.
going to do the after party after this.
Right.
Sweet.
So hang out if you want to.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate you guys.
Yes, and you can turn on